Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Great to be back.
So today we're diving into something that comes up a lot, this idea of double standards, particularly how it gets discussed in relation to China. We hear about it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme. And looking at the material we've gathered, you can kind of see certain patterns emerging across different areas, too.
Exactly, like economics, identity, even individual behavior.
Right.
So we've got a bunch of notes, some articles, even some pretty current examples to help us unpack this.
Okay.
Our mission basically is to explore the logic, or maybe the lack of logic sometimes, look at the contradictions people point out, and, think about what it all might mean, what function it serves.
Sounds like a good plan. There's definitely a lot to dig into there.
All right, let's kick off with the economy, because that seems like a really prominent example in a lot of the discussions we looked at.
Yeah, the way the story changes depending on how the economy's doing.
Totally. The material spends a good amount of time laying this out.
Well, what gets highlighted is this pretty clear pattern. When things are going well, economically speaking, the narrative you hear is consistently like, this is thanks to the party's brilliant leadership. Their policies are working. It's presented as a direct result of their governance.
Right. And you see it reflected visually, don't you? The amazing skylines, shiny skyscrapers, everyone getting cars, the high-speed rail everywhere.
Exactly. And the stats get brought out, too, like high-tech manufacturing growth, what was it, around 8.9% recently? IT services growing over 10%.
Wow.
And China leading in exports for key stuff, rare earth magnets, solar panels, lithium-ion batteries. It's all framed as proof that the party's plan is effective.
And the point being made is that this is all deliberately done to build public trust.
Yeah, build trust, build support, link the party directly to prosperity, legitimacy through success, basically.
Okay. But here's where it gets really interesting, according to these analyses.
The flip side.
The flip side. When the economy hits a rough patch, and we've certainly seen challenges lately, right? The real estate crisis is a big one.
Huge. Some areas seeing prices drop, like 80%? That's dramatic?
Yeah. Or concerns about local government debt, all that stuff. Suddenly the story changes. It's not presented as a result of party leadership or policies anymore.
No, absolutely not. According to the analysis, the blame gets systematically shifted, pushed outward.
Outwards, like where?
Often towards the West. It's described as a really key mechanism in controlling the narrative.
Okay. So things like Western media exaggerating problems. I think I saw mention of doom mongers back during the 2015 stock market issues.
Exactly, that kind of thing. Or more recently, blaming Western countries for tariffs, trade restrictions, the geopolitical tensions we're seeing play out.
Right, stuff around 2024, 2025 trade dynamics.
Yeah, so those external factors become the main reason for the economic difficulty. The idea, it seems, is to deflect criticism away from the domestic system.
And point fingers outwards instead. Rally people against an external threat.
Pretty much. Keep the focus off internal issues and potential policy missteps. The sources actually give it a name. They call it a responsibility cutting mechanism.
Responsibility cutting. Okay, break that down.
Simple, really. Good times. Party takes all the credit. Full responsibility. Bad times. Responsibility is just cut. Severed from the party. Blame lands elsewhere.
Wow. And the analysis suggests this is crucial for maintaining legitimacy, especially when people might be feeling the pinch economically.
That's the argument. It protects the party's image when things aren't going so well.
And this often goes hand in hand with ramping up nationalist feelings, right? That whole us versus them thing.
Definitely. Channeling frustration outwards rather than letting it build up internally and maybe question the system itself.
One thing that jumps out is the logical tension there.
How so?
Well, if the party is solely responsible for all the success because they're so brilliant, how can they have zero responsibility when things go wrong? It feels contradictory.
It does, and the sources point that out. You see these competing claims. On one hand, China has surpassed the West, or is about to, super powerful, technologically advanced.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, current economic problems are because the West is bullying us or holding us back.
Huh. Or the whole internal circulation idea, boost our own domestic economy.
Right, rely on ourselves more.
While also complaining that the West isn't buying enough of our stuff.
Exactly. It's presented as this kind of logical knot. There was even a sort of analogy mentioned, like someone saying, I got fit all by myself through sheer effort.
Okay.
But the stomachache I have is totally your fault. Success is internal effort. Failure is external interference.
Huh. That's a vivid way to put it. So the point isn't whether it's perfectly logical, but that this narrative serves a purpose.
That's what the analysis suggests, a deeply political purpose. Maintaining the party standing, managing perception.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit then. How does this whole narrative, this pattern of shifting blame and maybe identity, how does it actually get inside people's heads? How does it affect individuals?
Yeah, that's a crucial part. The sources talk about something that sounds a bit like, well, they use terms like political narrative internalization syndrome.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is. Or maybe think of it as a patriotic condition reflex.
Okay, like an automatic reaction?
Kind of. The idea is, after being exposed to this way of thinking over and over, some people just automatically switch into what's described as a double standard nation protection mode.
Nation protection mode.
Yeah. So if they, or maybe other Chinese people, face criticism internationally, could be about anything, the first instinct isn't always, is there some truth to this?
It sounds self-reflection.
Not necessarily. The analysis suggests it's often an immediate jump to a defensive nationalist stance, protect the image.
Interesting. And this ties into how Chinese identity itself is used, right?
Absolutely. The material points out how flexible that definition seems to be, almost used strategically.
How so? Give me an example.
Okay, so say a Chinese tourist behaves badly overseas, cutting in line, being disruptive, whatever.
Yeah, happens sometimes.
The defense you might hear, according to these sources, is often like, hey, you can't judge all 1.4 billion Chinese people based on this one person.
Right. Don't generalize. Distance the bad behavior from the collective.
Exactly. But then contrast that with someone maybe of Chinese heritage, but not necessarily from the mainland, who achieves something amazing.
Like who?
Well, the example often cited is Jeremy Lin, identifies as Taiwanese American, becomes a basketball star.
Insanity, yeah.
And suddenly she's claimed, he's Chinese, a success for all Chinese people. The identity expands to embrace the achievement.
Ah, I see. So bad stuff isn't us, but good stuff, even from the diaspora, is us.
That's what the sources label a double standard show of Chinese identity. It's described as very tool-like.
Tool-like?
Yeah, like the party uses the identity to harvest good news when it suits them, but creates distance when individuals cause problems or reflect poorly.
Gotcha. And this defensiveness, you mentioned it playing out abroad.
Yeah, sometimes in really minor situations, someone gets called out for breaking a small rule, maybe in a shop or something.
Instead of just saying, oops, sorry.
The reaction might be immediate aggression. Like, why are you picking on me? Is it because I'm Chinese? Accusations of discrimination.
And the analysis suggests this isn't just, like, bad manners.
It suggests it could be more than that. Maybe a learned reaction tied to that whole internalized narrative. Any criticism, even personal, feels like an attack on the nation.
And by extension, an attack on the party or the system.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
So admitting you were wrong, even about cutting in line, might feel like letting the side down, like a betrayal.
Wow. So it makes it hard to just own up to small mistakes.
It could. It's presented as this mechanism that kind of short-circuits self-reflection, defaulting to defense.
Okay. This actually brings us to a really specific recent example that seems to capture a lot of this. It feels a bit awkward, honestly, but the situation with the curator.
Ah, yes. His recent trip to China, that's described in the material as a pretty vivid case study.
Right. It shows these double standards playing out in multiple ways.
Definitely. Both in terms of his own behavior and then how he was treated.
So first, the double standard applied to him in Taiwan, described as, a democratic space. He's famous for being super critical of the government, right? Like really harsh sometimes. Cursing the government is natural there, as one source puts it.
Yeah, freedom of speech allows for that kind of sharp critique.
But then he goes to mainland China, an authoritarian space. And his whole tone changes, apparently.
According to the accounts, yes. Suddenly, he's praising things. In that context, praising the government is logical, is how one interpretation frames it. He avoids all the sensitive stuff.
So it looks like being brave only where it's safe. That's a phrase used, isn't it?
That's the observation made, yeah. A stark contrast in behavior depending on the environment.
Okay, but then there's the other double standard, how the Chinese side treated him.
Right. Initially, when he was saying positive things, some online comments were apparently quite welcoming. Oh, a conscientious Taiwanese compatriot, seeing the good side.
Yeah, like maybe he could be won over.
But then that support just vanished instantly.
Why? What happened?
The specific incident mentioned was about waving the 5-star flag. Apparently, he hesitated or didn't do it enthusiastically enough when prompted.
Seriously, that's all it took.
That's the report. And boom, the narrative flips. He goes from conscientious compatriot to being attacked online as a Taiwan independence dog.
Wow. Just like that.
It perfectly illustrates what the sources call that shifting threshold of political correctness. Saying nice things isn't enough.
You have to perform loyalty in exactly the right way, according to some unwritten rule.
Precisely. Fail that test, and you're immediately relabeled as an enemy. There's no middle ground.
And the official side of things, how do they handle it?
Well, the state bodies welcomed him publicly, framed it as, peaceful, cross-strait exchange, good PR, looks open.
Okay.
But internally, the material discusses it in the context of United Front work.
The party's strategy to influence groups outside the mainland.
Exactly. Suggesting he might have been seen as a potential target for influence, or maybe his visit used as an example somehow.
Man, that puts people, especially Taiwanese individuals, in a really tough spot, doesn't it?
Incredibly difficult. You get attacked from both sides, potentially, say something positive about the mainland, and some back in Taiwan might call you a sellout, licking the CCP netizen.
Right.
But then, if you're in the mainland and you don't perform loyalty perfectly, you get slammed as a Taiwan independence dog by nationalists there.
It's like being caught in this cognitive warfare air wall, as one source called it.
Yeah, trapped between totally different language systems, democratic language versus obedience language, maybe, freedom of speech versus loyalty tests.
Makes genuine dialogue seem almost impossible on tricky subjects.
It highlights the challenge, definitely.
Okay, so let's pull back again. Look at the bigger picture here, because the analyses we looked at suggest this isn't just, random hypocrisy or people being illogical sometimes.
No, the argument is stronger than that.
This whole double standard nation protection mode.
Yeah.
It's presented as more than just a habit. It's described as a core tool.
Exactly. A tool for protecting the party and maintaining stability. That phrase, yi, wei yuan, comes up.
So it's by design, not a mistake.
That's the central argument. These inconsistencies, the shifting stories, they aren't bugs, they're features. Functional parts of a system designed to control public opinion, manage perception, and ultimately protect the party's power.
Wow, like a kind of political muscle memory.
That's a good way to think about it. A conditioned reflex. Something critical comes up, economy, social issue, bad behavior.
Yeah.
The automatic response, the trained response, is defend the party, push the blame outwards, West, external forces, whatever, and attack the critic. Question their loyalty, label them anti-China.
And this stems from that idea mentioned earlier, where everything gets equated.
Right. The state regime, party Xi Jinping logic. If you criticize any link in that chain,
you're rejecting the whole
in the eyes of those who hold that view, yes. So it demands this collective defense.
It sounds like it's more about protecting the party's face, its image and authority, than about, say, genuinely fixing problems or allowing real self-reflection if that involves admitting fault.
That's the critique presented. That the system controls the narrative boundaries, the upper and lower lines, to decide who counts as a qualified Chinese.
And those analogies used were pretty stark.
Yeah.
Like, if you try to be sincere, they're using a lie detector to check your conformity.
Yeah, or if you talk about peace, they're not listening for your intent, but for how red are you? How aligned are you with the party?
It paints a picture of a system that's almost inherently resistant to critical feedback, doesn't it?
Because criticism gets framed immediately as an attack, as a threat.
Okay. So, given everything we've kind of unpacked today, the economic story switching back and forth, the flexible identity claims, those defensive reactions, the curator example, and this idea of it all being a deliberate tool for party stability. Here's something to mull over.
Lay it on us.
If a system is designed or has evolved in such a way that admitting any kind of fault or allowing real internal criticism is seen and framed as basically a betrayal of the nation itself, then how can that system ever achieve genuine self-improvement? How can real correction or reform truly happen from within?
That's the fundamental question, isn't it? A huge challenge embedded in that kind of structure.
Well, that was definitely a deep dive. Some really complex, but I think important dynamics to think about there.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate you joining us today as we tried to unpack these ideas about narratives, identity, and, well, what the sources are calling double standards in this context.
It's always valuable to explore how these frameworks shape what we hear and how people perceive things.
Totally. So if you found this exploration interesting or insightful, please do remember to subscribe to The Deep Dive wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening.
And hey, one more thing. Our old friend Micky, he's got this really cool YouTube channel. Seriously, check it out. He does fun memes, music stuff, wine tasting, travel vlogs, just lots of great entertaining content. You should definitely go look him up.
Good stuff.
All right. Thanks again for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.